His wounds, his crown. Justice. Devotional series, episode 17. Yesterday we stood beneath the cross and let it break us. Today we lift our eyes because something is happening on that bleeding head that the soldiers who did it could never have understood. The thorns, they pierced your sacred brow. Your bleeding wounds became your crown. The soldiers meant it as a joke. They had a condemned man who had been called a king, so they staged a cruel little coronation to entertain themselves. They twisted together a crown of thorns and jammed it down onto his head, threw a purple robe over his torn back, put a reed in his hand for a scepter, and knelt in front of him sneering, "Hail, King of the Jews." Matthew 27:29. Every piece of it was mockery, and every piece of it was true. That is the staggering thing about this scene. They thought they were ridiculing a pretender. They were unknowingly staging the truest coronation in the history of the world. Start with the thorns, because the thorns are not a random cruelty. Thorns have a history in the Bible, and it goes all the way back to the beginning. When the first humans fell, when sin entered the world and the ground itself was cursed, God said the earth would now bring forth thorns and thistles. Genesis 3:17-18. Thorns are the signature of the curse. They are what a broken creation produces. They are the visible, prickling reminder that something has gone wrong with the world. And of all the things the soldiers could have grabbed to mock a king, they reached down and picked up the curse of the ground itself, wove it into a crown, and pressed it into the brow of the one who came to lift that very curse. Think about what that means. He did not just wear a crown of thorns, he wore the curse. The thorns of Eden, the symbol of everything that fell when we fell, were driven into the sacred head of the sinless Son of God, because he was taking the whole curse onto himself. We said it last time. He became a curse for us. Here you can see it. The curse of the ground, crowning the king who would reverse it. And it was our curse. The thorns he wore grew out of our fall, not his. He had never sinned. He had nothing to do with the breaking of the world. And he took its crown of thorns onto his own head for us. Now the second line. Your bleeding wounds became your crown. The song does not say the wounds covered his crown, or hid it, or shamed it. It says the wounds became his crown. The suffering itself was the coronation. And this is the great inversion at the center of the gospel, the thing the whole world gets backwards. We assume glory is the opposite of suffering, that a king is glorious when he is enthroned in gold, and humiliated when he is bleeding on a cross. The gospel says no. For this king, the cross was the throne. The wounds were the regalia. The blood running down that face was the truest display of his glory there has ever been, because his glory is not the glory of raw power. It is the glory of a love that lays itself down. He is never more kingly than in the moment he is dying for his enemies. Paul traced the whole arc of it. Christ humbled himself, he wrote, by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place. Philippians 2:8-9. Therefore, because of the cross, not in spite of it. The exaltation did not arrive after the humiliation as a reward that canceled it out. It came through the humiliation as its very crown. This tells us what kind of king we have and what kind of kingdom he runs. One where greatness is measured by how low you will stoop to love, where the throne is a place of self-giving and not of grasping. The crown of thorns is not an interruption of his glory. It is the truest picture of it we will ever be given.
Jesus said it himself.
and he chose his words with care. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. John 12:32. Lifted up. He meant lifted up on the cross, and he meant lifted up in glory, in the same breath, with the same words, because for him they were the same event. The hour of his deepest humiliation was the hour he called the hour of his glorification. Even Pilate, without meaning to, testified to it. He nailed a sign over the cross that read, "The King of the Jews," and when the crowd objected that Jesus only claimed to be king, Pilate refused to change it. "What I have written, I have written." John 19:22. The title was meant as a charge. It was the simple truth posted over the throne. And here is what should move us most. Those wounds did not disappear when the suffering was over. When Jesus rose, he still bore them. He showed them to his disciples. He told Thomas to put his finger in the marks. And at the very center of heaven, in the throne room of God, the scripture shows us not a warrior in shining armor, but a lamb, looking as if it had been slain. Revelation 5:6, standing at the center of the throne. The marks of the wounds are still there, in glory, forever. He did not heal them over and move on. He kept them. They are his eternal crown. For all of eternity, the King of Heaven will wear the evidence of what he suffered, and every redeemed soul that ever looks on him will see, written into his own body, the cost of their rescue. So let this be personal, the way the cross always is. The crown he wears because of you. The thorns were our curse, pressed into his head. The wounds were earned by our sin and carried in his body, and he was not ashamed of them. He did not regard the crown of thorns as a degradation to be forgotten. He took it up willingly, wore it as honor, and carried its marks into glory as the proof of his love. When you finally see him face to face, you will not see a king who has put the cross behind him. You will see the Lamb who was slain, still bearing for you the marks of the day he was crowned with your curse and made it his glory. And there is a deep comfort in this for anyone carrying wounds of their own. We do not worship a king who floated above all suffering and cannot relate to ours. We worship a king who carries scars. He knows what it is to bleed, to be mocked, to be crushed under a weight that was not fair. So when you come to him broken, you are not approaching a stranger to pain. You are approaching the one who wore the curse of the whole world as a crown and was not ashamed of it, which means he is not ashamed of you, not repelled by your wounds, not impatient with your scars. The king who reigns in wounds is gentle with the wounded. We came to this scene expecting only horror, and the horror is real. But woven all through it, if we have eyes to see it, is the most unexpected majesty. The lowest point in the story is somehow also the highest. The man being executed is the king being crowned. The instrument of shame is the throne of glory. And the curse that fell on all of us is being lifted onto one head, the only head that could bear it and turn it into a crown. There is only one thing left in this verse, and it is the hardest and the most final. He wore the crown, he bore the wounds, and then, upon that tree, he died. That is where we go next.